super profundo on the early eve of your day. Welcome back to Out of the Cave, where we reimagine what society can be if given a fresh start. I'm your host, JP Taxman, a designer, thinker, and realist, searching for the right questions to get the right answers to create a society that is better and not perfect. So today, we're doing a little bit of a different episode. This will actually normally be very exclusive. It's going to be only accessible through Patreon, where we do street epistemology, where I examine someone's belief and why they have it and dig into if they feel they really should have that belief or maybe if they shouldn't. And often that doesn't get resolved here on the podcast, but they think about it later and maybe change their mind or become more sure in that belief. Today we talk with Adam French, who's an awesome dude. I met him through a friend of mine, Tanner German, who owns a company called defnition software development, probably minus the software development part. But nonetheless, Adam's an awesome dude. He has his own podcast called Applied Awareness. I was featured on there, which we had a really fun, cool conversation, and it's always nice to be on the other side of the microphone for once. But we get into some really interesting insights here about the law of attraction. And this conversation made me think a lot more deeply about my beliefs around the law of attraction. And I'm still a little unsure on it. After thinking about time a little too much, I'm almost considering that fate is the way the universe is, but you never know for sure. Anyhow, be sure to go subscribe to Patreon so you can get more of these if you really like this episode and it's more of a thing that you want to look into. And if you're interested in being on the podcast to be a participant and get an belief examined, hit me up at what email? outofthecave19@gmail.com, and we can get you on here and see what's going on in your head. The Patreon link is patreon.com/outofthecave. Again, that's always accessible in the show notes. One last thing before we get into it. I was using the wrong mic when I got started, so the first bit is a little bit quiet for me, and then it switches and there's a little bit of a pause. So just ignore the kind of confusion for a minute and we kind of jump back into what we were discussing. So let's now take our 14th and a half step out of the cave with Adam French. So here we go. This is my first version of this type of episode. Pretty excited about it. It's the street epistemology. I've done a test one, which I might release. But that was me just kind of practicing the skill set.
Gotcha. Asking the right questions. Gotcha.
So I'm excited about this one. This is one, too, that I've thought about a lot. And
yeah.
I honestly don't even know where I stand either, right? So
yeah.
We're going to dive into your belief about the law of attraction. And are we going to get into the quantum entanglement part that you talked about?
Yeah, we can. I mean, that's pretty half-baked, but we can definitely mess around with it.
Sure. Okay, so let's go. Just first off, tell me right now, what are your beliefs around the law of attraction? What do you think it is, and why do you believe in it?
Yeah, so the law of attraction, I interpret it to be like if you put a certain energy out, if you put a certain set of beliefs out, if you really use visualization, I think things will come to you easier that you visualize and that energy you put out. For example, when I started my journey in entrepreneurship, I wanted to create a health app that was going to revolutionize healthcare. Really big idea. I was like 18. And I put that energy out there. And that means to me, putting an energy out there doesn't mean like thinking really hard and like, oh, this is going to happen. Let me think about it really hard. No, it means go out talking to people. And I think when you go out and talking to people, your passion, your energy will excite them and attract them to you, especially people of like minds. And I've met a lot of people with like minds just because I was like, hey, I like what that person is doing. I'm going to contact them. I think you're one of those people. So that's what it is to me. And I recently read an article on Psychology Today that said something about throwing away the law of attraction, and it explained that the law of attraction was basically you really hope and visualize really hard that something's going to happen, and the universe is going to make it happen. So I don't necessarily believe in that, but I believe in my own version.
Okay. All right. So let's get into what you believe your version is.
Okay.
You talked a little bit about, how you started meeting like-minded people. Now, do you think that is the law of attraction, that when you start getting into some maybe vibration or way of doing things, that you start attracting other people of that similar mindset and belief system as you?
Yeah, I think that's a part of it. I think at the end of the day, it's about seeing how you feel inside manifested in your physical world and your, the world that we perceive to be reality. So yeah, I think meeting people who are like-minded is definitely a big part of it.
Okay. Now, on a scale of 1 to 100, 1 being you don't believe it at all, you think it's complete bullshit.
Okay.
And then 100 being
this is the truth.
This is the truth. This is all. I'm 100% sure that this is real.
Yeah.
Where are you on that scale, do you think?
In my version or the real, quote unquote, real version that I...
Sorry, we just had a little mic difficulty. I had to switch mine. We were talking about the percentage of belief you're at. What did you say it was again?
So for my version.
Yes.
My version, I'd say it's a solid 80. I'm 20, so I don't see I don't have any very
80%.
Strong 100 beliefs in anything.
Okay. All right.
But I'd say I'm fairly, based on my experience, that's been a really recurring theme. And obviously there's the thousands upon thousands of biases that affect my reflection upon how it worked, but that's how it is in my mind.
Okay, so let's go into really quick. What are some examples that you've seen in your life of the law of attraction? And then I want to get into some of what those biases are.
Yeah, absolutely. So examples from my personal life. Again, I mean, with the health app, people just started, when I reached out to people, they started answering. And recently, I've started to meditate a little bit more and tried to be in a more observant state of mind and at peace. And I feel like people are reacting to me a lot different socially, in a positive way.
Interesting.
And when people want to engage with me, and it seems like people are interested in what I'm doing, like just kind of without knowing them. And I feel like that's an energy I give off, right? Because some days when I'm like, and I didn't sleep well or something is wrong, I don't get that at all. I don't get that at all. Like, I'm not just someone who looks like so glorious that people are like, I want to talk to him. I think it's the feelings you're putting out there. And when I'm really at peace and I'm like walking through campus and I'm just like, wow, what a beautiful day. I feel like just those random little social interactions that happen during the day that you're like, oh, that was cool. I feel like it happens a lot more when I'm in that state of mind.
Okay, cool. So you're saying when you're like meditating, when you're in a more positive state of mind, you more likely are to have someone come up and approach you and start talking to you. Yeah. Or like someone will say something nice to you or something along those lines.
Yeah, or when I approach someone else and I'm like, oh, that's cool, or we interact in some way, it lingers a little bit and they express more interest in staying in that conversation instead of like, oh, excuse me, bye,
Okay. Interesting. Let's go to the biases part.
Yeah.
Where do you think your biases lie in believing in this?
Well, there's always that confirmation bias. I think that's just the biggest one. And that, for example, the social interactions thing that I talked about, I probably don't remember the hundreds of opportunities that didn't manifest, and I'm not bringing to memory the times when people didn't show interest in me and we did interact while I was in that state of mind.
Right.
So that's always a possibility.
Sure.
Maybe it
didn't happen that way and I'm remembering it correctly, but I'm not going to remember, or I'm not going to have a high probability of remembering when I was like, hi, and someone just brushed me off, because I don't want to remember it.
Okay. So is there any specific areas where you've seen the law of attraction like really benefit you in any way? Like, other than these small little interactions here and there, have you ever seen it just like bring something into your life that was just at the right place at the right time? And was it connected to any other specific thought or way of, I guess, another maybe belief that you were working on in some way? Is there anything along those lines?
There are a couple ways that my actions led to a meaningful branch in my journey.
Okay.
So I was at the very beginning of this health app idea. I was doing, I think, like a meeting for the fraternity that I was founding, and a few of the alumni members from past chapters before it dissolved were there. And I think I was talking about some app stuff, and one of the guys, Mark Hamilton, we're not in touch now, probably should hit him up, but he was like, oh, you're trying to build an app, and then he just starts like rambling about computer shit. Now at that point I was like, what is that? Like, I want to learn more.
Sure.
So we got in contact, and he ended up really empowering me to think big and saying, like, you can do that. And one of the reasons that my idea didn't come to fruition, I think, was that we kept blowing it up, that feature bloat.
I get that.
Think bigger and bigger and bigger. And at that age and that point in my life, I was very, very sensitive to that happening. But this guy, he got me on the path to coding. He taught me Swift. I did a lot of coding with him.
Nice.
And that really shaped my life for the next year or two, and the people I interacted with, the scene I got into, the tech startup scene, and the skills that I got. And now I have development. No, they're a little rusty now, but I have development skills, and in this world,
totally,
that's a super useful thing to have.
Without a doubt. Now, in what ways? Because the law of attraction, a lot of people think of it, and you're attracting mainly like the positive things. What are the specific instances where the opposite has happened, where you've attracted not so positive things? Where could maybe the law of attraction have been attributed to you not getting what you want? Like maybe the app not coming fully to fruition. Like why, in what places in maybe your actions or way of believing to attract that not happening correctly in?
Well, I think yeah, the app is a good example to go back to. I felt like I wasn't ready to build it. After kind of realizing and understanding development enough to know how much work it would be, I was like, I think I'm going to take a step back and learn and just go back to being a student and learn this stuff outside of school. And that was a lack of confidence in myself. I think it was fairly warranted at the time because I didn't know anything. I really started like working on myself when that idea started. So I didn't have any previous experience in high school. Like I played basketball, and I was a decent student, but I didn't really try to apply myself. And with an idea that big, I'm not going to get it done. So that's. I don't know if that's a law of attraction at work.
That's what I was about to ask. Yeah, like is that a law of attraction, or is that just kind of...
That's just me not being ready.
Not being ready and not quite persevering as much, maybe.
One thing that I've noticed when I feel like you feel something, there's a thought in the back of your head, and then it's brought up by someone else. That really happened a lot in my relationship. So I was in a relationship for a year and a half during my freshman and sophomore years. And I noticed, like, if I had something in the back of my head, it would come up in some certain way, and we would have to talk about it. And that was really interesting to me, how that, like, little energy or that little thought, that little idea, or that little bit of tension that I had in my mind, how it eventually came to the surface. And you can't hide it.
Would it come up quickly after you thought about it, or how long between when you thought about it and when it would come up roughly? If you can remember, I mean, that's got to be it. When was that relationship?
It was, I mean, we broke up like 6 months. I'm not good with months.
Don't worry about it. Just roughly.
It was in like October.
Okay.
I think.
Is when it ended. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
September, October.
Somewhere in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's not as important, but.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that time, what?
In terms of the length it took to manifest.
Yeah. From like when you thought about that thing happening to when it actually happened, was it almost always like, okay, you were thinking about it the night before and then the next day you were discussing it? Was it always different? Was it sometimes a week, sometimes?
I think it was always different, but it was usually within a week.
Mm-hmm. And would it be always you bringing it up, or would she sometimes?
Something would just happen. Something would just happen to trigger it. Whether it's something that she said or something that I said that she interpreted a certain way. And a lot of the times the miscommunication that you experience is a manifestation of the thoughts, the negative thoughts in your idea.
Sure.
And I think that's a really applied way of looking at this law, quote unquote law.
Right. We'll see if it's a law, right?
Yeah.
So could it be the law of attraction, or could that be a form of priming, where you know what priming is?
I have an idea of the concept, but not.
So priming is roughly, it's like where, because our brains are meant to see patterns, like we're really good at pattern recognition, because you know, when we were in the caveman days, right, and we're hunting for food, or you know, we're looking out for our lives, there's a lion, you know, we have to like be able to recognize that there's a pattern of that's a lion, I better run, right? So we are really good at looking for patterns. Could that possibly be an explanation of the scenario where you think about it and then you've said that that's a pattern that you want to see, and then so you do something, or you recognize you're more likely to recognize it when it comes up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly could be the case, but I also think that this law of attraction thing and mechanisms such as priming, I don't think they're different. I think priming is simply a manifestation of the law of attraction, right? And our physical, mechanisms and chemical mechanisms react to this sort of more holistic energy that we cultivate and carry around with us.
Interesting. Okay. Now, how do you, and talk about this as much as you feel comfortable talking about it or can, right?
Yeah.
Play into how you think like quantum entanglement plays into the law of attraction.
So quantum entanglement, like when two electrons separated by space are the spins of those electrons are intertwined with each other, and when one changes, the other changes. I think it has to do because electrons are energy, right? And the whole law of attraction is based on this exchange of energy. So I think when you cultivate a certain energy, there's like a mirror image or something across time and somewhere in the world. So when you cultivate that type of energy, I have no clue how any of this would work physically, like frequency of energy based on the electrons, but I have no clue. Like that's just
how do which electrons choose, and how do those electrons deal with our, the electrons are they our thinking electrons, or are they just the ones that are working in our eyeballs? Which electrons are connected?
Who knows? Right. Who knows? But I think it's very grounded in reality that we all give off electromagnetic signatures. And I think a little bit less grounded in reality, but I think that that electromagnetic signature is a sum of all of our chakras, right? Of the energy, radiation, or that they give off. And this is also half-baked, but this is like, it makes sense to me. And I think that quantum entanglement is one physical way that this energy exchange works. And we're really, like, we don't think about things in Western science as energy. Like, I mean, if you're in physics, you do, but it's a very mechanical way of looking at energy.
Mm-hmm.
You're not thinking like, I walk by someone with a certain electromagnetic frequency that they're letting off, and that changes my brain or my brain's reaction in a certain way. But you look at things like animals sensing fear, and I don't think that's a hormone you give. I mean, like, do you give off a smell when you're scared? Sometimes, right? But it's more like they can sense that you're scared. How do they sense that? I think that has something to do with the exchange of energy. And one thing that I've been reading is a book by Michael Pollan, How to Change Your Mind. And he talks about how, like, our perception of reality, so we can function to reproduce, it's very narrowed. So we only have a certain amount of sensory data that we actually end up getting. And I think if we had a lot more sensory data, like what happens when you do psychedelics, it busts that funnel. It's called the default mode in your brain, and it busts that open. So you have all the data coming in, and you start to see things like energies.
Now, by sensory, what do you exactly mean by sensory data? By sensory data, are we talking the amount you're seeing or focusing on at once, the amount you're smelling, the amount you're tasting? What exactly do you mean by sensory data? Or are we talking about a different sense out of like touch, smell, feel?
It's the same sensory data. It's the way it's processed in our brain. That's more what I'm talking about. And this is like something I read. I feel like I understood it decently well, but I don't have it right in front of me.
Yeah,
right.
Stuff.
But I believe it's how the sensory data comes in, and then it's combined in a certain way inside of the brain to maintain order. Because if you don't have order, you have like all these different connections going off, and it's hard to function in a physical world. Now, I think the law of attraction it may manifest itself physically sometimes, but I think it's less physical and more energetic. And like, what is the difference? What is the energetic world? Like, I'm not an expert on this shit, I'm not like a mystic guru or anything. It's just the way that I view the world.
Sure.
And I think the energetic reality is just as much a reality as our physical reality, but we just don't perceive it.
Now, do you think the mystic guru should have a good understanding of the principles of physics and how that world works, the scientific world of energy works?
I think they should definitely understand that. And I think, to me, I just did a post on this. Like, I think thoughts are powerful, and we're getting closer to the truth of reality when you see the same results across thinking frameworks and mechanisms. So, like, my example I used was the chakra chart and Erickson's stages of development and the hierarchy of needs. And I was like, these are saying the same things, just differently, slightly differently. The chakras are more holistic as it takes an energetic view. But when I see things like that and see like this thing in 1500 BC in India matches the results of this psychologist in Stanford in the 60s, same outcome. Like, that's when I'm like, okay, that I can take that as truth now. So if you're a mystic guru and you're like, all this energy, radiations, I want you to try to explain how it can manifest itself using our current frameworks of measuring things.
Okay. Trying to think where exactly to take this next.
Yeah.
What about the law of attraction do you really want to believe? Like, what is it about it that is really just appealing to you, or you're like, maybe there's a part of you that's like, I shouldn't believe that part, but I just really want to?
Yeah. I think that part also aligns with what I've read in Taoism, and that's like, if you like maintain a certain mindset, things like the little things you don't have to worry about. So if you maintain a mindset of, for example, unconditional giving and love towards people, that will manifest itself in like I almost got hit by a car the other day, like, for real.
Shit.
And like I hopped off and she stopped at the last second. Like maybe that's the manifestation where I have cultivated a certain awareness, so I'm able to hop off the scooter just a little bit sooner than I need to.
Interesting. So you're saying because you've cultivated this, you've meditated a lot, you've cultivated this more positive, uplifting type of mindset and energy, as you've been saying, right?
Yeah, and it was also given. It was also given to me through how I grew up and the privileges I got through.
Oh, okay. So part of it can come from like your parents and your environment growing up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is it always that case, or is it only sometimes? And you can grow up with like not as good an upbringing, but you can find it as you get older.
Yeah, I think you can always find it.
Okay.
Because one thing that I'm starting to see is there's like an underlying fulfillment. Everyone gets fulfilled from giving love and giving to other people. That is like a basic reality.
Okay.
And people think they're fulfilled when they like maybe fuck someone over and win a business deal because of it. But I think that comes back in the long term in terms of like despair and these negative feelings, right?
Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to come back to that real quick. I want to finish the first point. So you think you're cultivating that mindset is the reason that you didn't get hit on the scooter, is because that manifested into something perceived as negative towards your well-being was prevented because over the course of your life you've been able to manifest this kind of positive, energetic aura.
I think that might be it, and I can't tell you whether it's for certain. Like you want that kind of stuff to be true. Like I'm protected by my mindset. I think, like as you said, what do you want to be true? So that is one of the things. Like if I continue to cultivate this mindset, then everything that's bad that happens to me at the end of the day is a learning opportunity, right? So at the end of the day, it protects me from that. Even if I experience pain, experience discomfort, I think that's where people, grow.
Got it. Okay, so then on the other side, coming back to the guy who maybe fucks someone over in a business deal and feels really good about that.
Yeah.
By doing that, that person then is more likely, like let's put them in your same scenario, when they're driving on the scooter, they're likely going to get hit by the car because they brought on possibly this like kind of negative aura.
Yeah, so I think it's all like with human psychology and the way we work, it's all about tendencies, and it's a very dynamic kind of fluid way of being. So I think this person who fucks someone over in a business deal, they're not going to be able to get over the little things in life as much. So when they're on that scooter, they're more likely to be thinking about like, what if that guy comes back to get me, right? Because when you fuck someone over, that thought's going to show up. They're more likely to be thinking about that. They're more likely to be thinking about the slow service they got at the coffee shop or whatever. If they're thinking about that, they're not going to notice a car that's pulling in, right? So I think their mind is more likely to be cluttered because if you're giving unconditionally and loving unconditionally, your mind tends to be less cluttered with negativity.
Interesting. Okay. So could what the law of attraction maybe possibly be is just a long linkage of cause and effect?
Yeah, completely. I think, yeah, 100%.
Okay. All right.
That's all the work I'm doing. I'm like, is predicated off of it. It's like, let's become aware of the cause and effect so we can control it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Is there anything else? Okay, let's do that. Let's kind of, I think we're good to kind of wrap it up around here.
Cool.
But let's go again. What on a scale of 1 to 100, where do you feel you are now after this conversation? Would you say you're at on the law of attraction?
My version, right?
Yeah.
Okay. My version, I'd say I've convinced myself a little bit more of it.
Okay.
I'd say like 80, 85.
85. Yeah. Okay. All right.
The cause and effect thing, it kind of just clicked, So.
All right. Okay, cool. Yeah, and I'd love to also hear where you're at in like a week or two after thinking maybe more about it.
Yeah.
What you kind of come to.
The thing is, like, my version of the law of attraction is so different from like what it is in the mainstream.
Sure.
And like what I was looking at in that Psychology Today article, I was like, this is just not grounded in reality. Visualize something, don't set goals. And don't,
and it'll just like happen, like the woo-woo version of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just unrealistic. I think that's getting people to believe something they want to believe.
Right.
But like for me, it's like I have to set goals, or it's not going to be done. So
right. I think that's a pretty prominent part. And I think maybe in that, would you agree, is where the law of attraction sets, is by setting those goals. That's what brings that closer into your life.
Yeah, and I think that's a sort of visualization, because you're visualizing yourself being done with something by a certain time. So like then it starts towards action. And once you start towards action, that's the most powerful thing.
Right, taking the action. There's got to be some kind of movement towards that goal.
Yeah, and something pushing you. Yeah, and I think that's the time. The time kind of pulls you. You're like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. You can't. You can't wait, because for like making a business, there's so much work involved in that. You have to start now. You have to start 2 days ago.
Yeah, right. So much to do.
So setting the goal is like, or not setting the goal is just sabotaging yourself.
Definitely. I love it, man. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is really hard for me, because I don't know if you noticed, like I can't, there's so many things I want to say to like either agree with you on or put some kind of other anecdote in there to aid what you're saying or disagree with what you're saying. But part of this method is that I'm only allowed to really ask questions.
Gotcha.
So the basis to the method is I can only ask questions. I can restate what you say and kind of say it back to you, so to make sure you understood that I understood what you said.
Yeah.
And then, damn it, there's a third part that I just forgot. That I literally just did.
That's cool. I mean, there's a lot of value. There's a lot of value in that. And I think that's a good like sales technique.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best one. Yeah. Just ask questions and then
say it back to them.
Give you the answers that they're looking for.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. So yeah, man, do a shout out for your podcast real quick that we're about to do a recording on.
Yeah. So check out the Applying Awareness podcast. It's wherever you get your podcasts, and it's about, as I mentioned earlier, becoming aware of the causes and effects internally and externally, and then trying to apply that awareness by controlling the causes and effects to make your life better.
It's really good. I highly recommend you guys check it out. I mean, as you've listened to for the past roughly 30 minutes, he's got a pretty sexy voice. So it's soothing on the ear holes. All right, man. Thanks again.
Absolutely.